the record as well. Perfect. Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's start the attendance. Alex. Present. Archana.
Present, sir.
Present. Osis.
Yes, sir.
Present. Dipesh. Present. Ivan.
Yes, sir.
Present. Jeju.
Yes, sir.
Present. Merina. Present. Ninju. Present. Nissan. Nissan Sreshta. Absent. Ojaswi. Present. Prakriti. Absent. Prasamsa. Present. Praveen. Present. Raman. Present. Ratnaprabha. Ratnaprabha. Absent. Revision. Present. Ritesh. Present. Rivaj. Present. Ronim. Present. Satyam. Satyam Srashna. Absent. Salina. Present. Sarisma. Present. Shekhar.
Present, sir.
Present. Smith.
Present, sir.
Present. Swarup. Okay. Eunice.
Present, sir.
Okay. Okay, so I'll call name of absentees. If you are there, please let me know. Nissan Srashta absent. Prakriti Banjade absent. Ratna Prabha absent. Okay, Ratna is present. Okay, Satyam absent. Satyam Srashta. Nissan, Prakriti, and Satyam are absent. We must have 23 attendees. 3. Okay, so today's nominee for revision is Shekhar. So Shekhar, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Shekhar, you have got 1 to 5 minutes. So you can reiterate what we have learned in the last class in your own words. So I'd like to welcome Shekhar. Over to you, Shekhar.
Thank you, sir. So, from last class, we started off last class. You started off last class sharing news about Facebook's record $29 billion revenue from its second quarter, which financial statement and other income statements has already been published. There we read about Facebook's growth going constant, while its other rivals, Snapchat, Twitter, are scaling every year. त्यति बेला त्यो कोरिलेसनको पनि कुरा आएको थियो about Facebook's growth not being satisfying अनि while Twitter र Snapchat stocks are kept त्यसको Twitter र Snapchatको स्टक्सहरू चाहिँ राइज भइरहेको छ every day. We discussed about valuing prefer, preferred stock, which is dividend by return. Example गरेको थियौँ preferred stock को like bonds. Preferred stock has a par value and fixed dividend. However, preferred stock can be omitted without throwing the company into bankruptcy. These holders have a fixed amount of dividend, while equity holders को चाहिँ डिभिडेन्ड फिक्स्ड हुँदैन, हाई रिस्क हुन्छ इक्विटी स्टकमा, but at times profit पनि higher हुन्छ. To understand on how prices are calculated, you should example of Nobile Bank from Share Sansar website taking its different ratios or data. Source of data is very important to watch before taking buying decisions, since new report is about to since के अरे नयाँ रिपोर्टहरू आउँदैछ होइन, अब इट्स अबाउट टु कम probably by this week or first session of next week, I guess. So buying decisions based on past data would be a poor measure. Concluded the chapter talking about dividend discount model, which states that any stock's value depends on the future cash flow expected to be generated by the firm, and corporate value model, which is done when dividends are not known. This we went on to do couple of practical related questions related to, especially related to average rate of return, Sharpe ratio, standard deviation, beta, and correlations. And this is our different till the end we did examples related to this chapter. अनि लास्टमा चाहिँ हजुरले त्यो नेप्सीको त्यो क्यान्डल स्टिक र त्यो बार डायग्राम त्यो पनि देखाउनु भएको थियो, अन्त टकिङ अबाउट नेपाल्स करेन्ट सेयर मार्केट सिचुएसन, प्राइसेसहरू कसरी म्यानिपुलेट भइरहेको हुन्छ या भइरहेको त्यो गेस गर्न सकिन्छ त्यो क्यान्डल स्टिक र त्यो बार डायग्राम थ्रुको इक्जाम्पल देखाएर हजुरले त्यो दुईटा कुरा पनि गर्नुभएको थियो. सो लास्ट क्लासको I would like to conclude this way.
Thank you so much, Sekhar. Big round of applause. Wow, wonderful job done. Some of you sometimes surprise me, like how meticulously you can reiterate what we learned. Thank you so much, Sekhar. I'm proud of you. So, can you please nominate someone?
I guess everyone have already been nominated, I guess, till now. I don't remember.
We have 10 of us. Okay, I'll send you the list of one who have, okay, in the chat. Okay, you can see in the chat. Okay, so this is the list of, okay, list of names who have done revision. Apart from them, you can nominate anyone. Did you got it? Did you get it, Sekhar?
Yes, sir.
Okay, apart from them, you can nominate anyone. And also, yeah, please. Sorry.
Is it okay for Deepesh?
Deepesh. Okay, Deepesh, Dulal, can you please accept your nomination? Deepesh? Okay, perfect. Okay, Sekhar, thank you so much again. Deepesh, thank you for accepting nomination. Deepesh, I'll write your name in the roster.
Thanks, sir.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so let us move on with आजको class है. एकदम अब नयाँ chapter, नयाँ energy and very important chapter. One of the most important one हाम्रो यो learning finance मा अनि most applicable as well, capital structure and leverage. Right? Capital structure, by the term capital structure, we understood that there is two things, right? One is source, one is application. In simple terms, from where money comes in, and where do we spend that money, right? This is what it is in the company, right? In simple terms. But there are big names. Names might be financial leverage, operating leverage, and net current asset, and a lot of ratios, current asset, quick ratios, and millions of different terms. But in simple term, what do we do in the company? We just bring money in, and according to our vision, according to our space where we want to spend, according to our project, we simply apply those money, and that is called application. So from where the money comes, the breakup of that source, right? The breakup of that source is called capital structure. In the balance sheet, there are two parts. One is source of fund, and there is application of fund, right? Source of fund are liabilities. We ask money from someone. Maybe we ask from our father, mother, friends, our relatives, our uncle from US or uncle from somewhere, or aunt, or maybe we ask for creditors, or maybe we ask and go and ask to institutions like bank, the development banks, microfinance, or these other organizations, right? As a liability. As a capital, we bring money from our pocket, from our savings, from our uh, separated funds, and we invest in our vision, in our company. So these are the sources. What are the sources? One is liability, another is capital, right? In simple terms, liability and capital, right? So these are the two big terms. So out of these big two terms, we bring debt. One is debt. Liability is usually called as debt, and capital is usually called as equity. Now it's done. What is capital structure? In simple terms, from where the money is coming in, that is called source, right? And the breakup of that source is simply capital structure. Now we must have as a entrepreneur, or um, as a consultant or analyst, we must have that vision, right? Every sources have its own cost, right? Every sources, there were two sources, right? Every sources have its own cost, debt and equity. What is the cost of debt? The cost of debt is interest, right? Cost of debt is interest. What is the cost of equity? It's dividend. It's dividend. So you might know that what is the percentage, or what is the cost of interest. It might be 10%, it might be 8%, it might be any percentage according to the mutual agreement between you and lender. And what is the cost of equity? It's unlimited, as Shekhar was mentioning, right? He was revising our last class, and he was mentioning that in the case of equity, cost is unlimited. You have to pay equity holders all what is left off. There is a pie. In that pie, first of all, this pie is taken away by government. Okay, first of all, government tells you that, wait, you have to pay taxes. Let me take it away in the form of tax. Government takes your profit away in the form of tax. First preference is to the government. Second preference to the debt holders, Nobel Bank, or any or aunt from US, or anyone who have given you the money. They ask you their share in second order, right? First order was government. Second order was debt, and whatever is left, may it be 80% of pie which is left, may it be 70% of pie, or maybe even 5%, or there is no pie at all. All the pie is eaten away by government, and second means debt holder. So nothing is left, means equity holder get nothing. Their hands are empty, right? So we knew that cost of debt is interest, right? And cost of interest is fixed, but cost of equity is called dividend. Cost of equity is dividend and profit, and it's not fixed. It's never fixed. It's flexible, right? So how much debt we want to have in our capital structure, how much equity we want to have in our capital structure, we are going to learn in this chapter. The ones which will give whose cost is minimum. In simple terms, that capital structure whose cost is minimum, or weighted average cost of capital. It's called WACC, right? So weighted average, whose weighted average cost of capital is minimum, that capital structure is called optimum capital structure, and that is something which we are going to learn in this chapter, bit by bit, brick by brick. Okay. So let us delve into this this article, and as we will go through it, we'll definitely understand why we are going to learn this chapter and what we are going to learn and what are the things to look for in this chapter. Okay, so let me zoom a little bit here. Okay, so this is a case of Caterpillar Inc. You must have heard name of CAT, right? Cat, you might have seen boots, right? Shoes of this company. Not only that, big dozers and these kind of heavy equipments, right? Crane, dozer. You might see Caterpillar Inc.'s a lot of equipments around, right? Into that heavy vehicles and construction equipments. So this is a case of Caterpillar Inc. That rocket booster or anchor? Is it an anchor which shows the way, or is it a rocket booster which has high risk? Okay, so let us read it out, and please keep proper mind in this. Please be mindful. If it is to grow a firm, a firm needs capital, and capital comes primarily in the form of debt or equity. We have discussed this. Debt financing has two important advantages, very important. I think I'll not be surprised if this question will be asked in exam, like what is the advantage of debt over equity? And not only exam, also tomorrow if you are going to open any venture or you want to advise of some of your friend might ask, shall I put my own money or shall I ask from bank? So in that case, right, you might get your answer, or you can further explain them if you know these two advantages of debt. First advantage, interest paid is tax deductible, whereas dividends are not deductible, and this lowers debt's relative cost to equity. Now, you cannot deduct dividend while calculating tax. So what does it mean? Earning before, as you get earning before interest and tax. How do you get EBIT? You simply minus revenue with expenditure, right? Revenue minus expenditure. You get your earning before interest and tax. Now what you will do? You will minus EBIT with interest first. Interest. Here is interest and tax. As you will minus EBIT with interest, in that remainder, you pay your income tax, income tax of 25%. But you do not deduct dividend here. Dividend, you do not deduct it. You deduct interest before calculating tax. But the point is that you have to pay taxes ahead of interest. But interest is tax deductible, right? It is a little bit tricky while you calculate. I'll show you in next our slide as well. Here in our next slide, we are going to, I think it's in slide 7 or 8. We are going to discuss with example. Where is it? Where it is? Okay, in this slide, we are going to discuss how we calculate EBIT 1 minus tax, and then interest will come up, and then what happens around. So please don't be confused about it. No worries. So conceptually, please understand this. Interest is deductible before calculating tax because it's allowable expenditure, but dividend is not. If you pay dividend to your dividend holders, equity holders, may it be not dividend holders, equity holders. You cannot tell them dividend holders. Okay, so if you pay dividend to equity holders, then that amount, may it you pay 50% dividend like Nepal Telecom, may it you pay 30% dividend like Nobel Bank, or may you pay 0% dividend, right? So whatever it is, you cannot deduct this in tax. You have to pay tax first. After paying tax, whatever the remaining pie is there, out of that pie you have to pay these all, right? Out of that pie you have to pay them all. So one prominent example of debt financing is interest paid is tax deductible, and please mind, it makes a huge impact. It makes a huge impact in our selection of whether to go for debt or equity. Second one, the return on debt is fixed, so stockholders do not have to share firm's profit if the company turns out to be extremely successful. If firm is like Apple or firm is like Tesla, right? Its shareholders are making millions of money. But do you think that its stakeholders are making millions of money? Definitely not. They are making their fixed amount of 10% or they are making fixed amount of 12%. Although they are certain, it's certain for them to get that money, their standard deviation is almost near zero. Near zero, that Tesla might go bankrupt, right? Apart from that, their standard deviation might be near zero. But in case of equity holder, their standard deviation might be really high, right? But if companies as established as Tesla, as established as Microsoft, standard deviation might be really low, and their returns are also really high. Their returns are also really high, and in that case, their returns are not fixed. Their dividends are not fixed, but their interest is fixed. So in this case, the return on debt is fixed. So stockholders do not have to share. They do not have to share that pie. They paid around 25% to government, okay, as a tax. Remaining, they paid 10% to and out of that pie which government took, whatever the remaining pie was there, in out of that total, 10% is paid to debt holders, and remaining 65% is whole pie which is left for shareholders. Now it is either given as dividend, it is either given as dividend, or it is either reinvested in the company so that it will increase the dividend, or it will grow, the firm will grow by leaps and bounds. So the return on debt is fixed, so stockholders do not have to share firm's profit if the company turns out to be extremely successful. However, debt also has disadvantages. Please note that every financial terms, ratios, or even in our personal life, whatever has advantages always must have disadvantages as well. It's like a two side of a coin. So number one, using more debt increases the firm's risk and raises the cost of both debt and equity. Debt usually increases your firm's risk. Why? Because there is a certain percentage of debt you have to fulfill every year. You cannot have option of not to pay debt, interest of debt holder. If you cannot pay them, you have to sell your assets and pay them. You have to manage anyway, or you have to bring debt from another debt holders and pay to them. Most of the business नेपालमा चाहिँ usually company प्रफिटमा भएन भने एउटा डेट तिर्न अर्को ऋण लिने, अनि फेरि त्यसलाई तिर्नलाई अर्को ऋण लिने, फेरि त्यसलाई तिर्नलाई अर्को ठाउँबाट ऋण लिने, हो त्यसरी पे त्यो साइकल चलिरहेको. It's like vicious cycle which runs around, right? But usually what happens is that the amount interest of debt is fixed. You have to pay this anyway, right? You cannot shy away that we have not made profit, we will pay interest in next year for 2 terms. You cannot tell that, right? Unless of special circumstances. Rather than that, you have to pay anyway. So what happens, as your debt percentage is fixed, the firm's risk and raises the cost of both debt and equity. It also increases the cost. We will discuss how it increases the cost in coming slides. In those slides, we'll discuss exactly by how much portion the cost is increased by certain percentage of increment of debt. So this point we will learn in a micro level. Second, if the company falls on hard times and if operating income is not sufficient to cover interest charge, then firms may go bankruptcy. If company is running in losses, if company wants to pay back its debt holders but they cannot pay, then what happens? They have to liquidate their assets. They have to liquidate their assets. And what happens when assets is liquidated? The flow of revenue will sources of revenue replenish. When sources of revenue is shut down, then what happens? There is no generation of revenue at all. So ultimately, company will go towards bankruptcy. Right? So these are two risks. One, using more debt increases firm's risk and raises cost of capital. Second, company may go bankruptcy. And company might go into bankruptcy is the biggest risk of taking debt. You cannot keep on taking debt from debt holders. You cannot increase your debt year after year and like be in peace, right? So good times may be just around the corner, but too much debt can bankrupt the company before it reaches that corner. Because of the additional risk from using debt, companies with volatile earnings and operating cash flows tend to limit its use. You must limit. It's double-edged sword. It has its advantages, but you have to bear its disadvantages as well. On the other hand, companies with low business risk and stable operating cash flow can benefit from taking on more debt. Firms realize that when bad times hit, interest must be paid, so they must become leaner to strengthen their financial position and keep their credit rating declining in. Now, this is a case study. In 2009, Caterpillar Inc. CAT, the world's largest producer of earth-moving equipment. This was a term I was not able to gather minutes earlier. Earth-moving equipment. These are the largest producer of earth-moving equipment, cranes and dozers and these big big equipments, found itself in its precise situation. At the year end 2008, Caterpillar's book value structure consisted of how much? 89% debt. Caterpillar had 89% debt and 11% equity according to book value. According to book value, debt over capital and 11% equity, and 89% debt is quite high. It's huge, you know, it's huge. They have to pay a huge amount of money in the form of interest. Caterpillar's management was aware that excessive debt can push otherwise well-regarded company into bankruptcy. Indeed, the company was in the middle of recession that spilled over in global markets. Now it's in 2009. What happened? We are discussing about the year 2009, right? 2008, we had a grand recession, right? After 2008, company was struggling. Caterpillar's foreign sales made up 67%. Now you see, their export is around 67%. And out of that 60%, it was affected hugely by global recession. As a result, the firm's sales fell in 2009. Right? Sales definitely fell down in 2009. According to Caterpillar, management began to get its finance house in order by lowering its working capital. Now they started to overhaul. Why? Because their sale was down. What they have to do, they have to reduce cost as well to survive, because they can do some of the time like there is two risks, right? Inherent or market risk, isn't it? So those risks, market risk, you can do nothing about it. So what you can do, you can control your cost, right? You can control your cost and try to survive. So Caterpillar did the same. Reduces overhead cost, paying down its investor supplied debt. In fact, from the first quarter of 2009 through end of 2013, so within the period of 4 years, Caterpillar steadily reduces reliance on debt financing. Why is it doing? Its revenue was once high, right? After the recession, its revenue decreased and plunged. And what now step they are trying to take? They are trying to decrease the cost. Now, in that mission of decreasing cost, decreasing interest cost was really vital. Why? Because their sales was not going to go up sooner, like in quick pace. It would take much more time for economy to recover. So what they were trying to do, from 89% debt, they were trying to convert. They were trying to convert their debt into equity. Why? So that they don't have to pay interest, right? You only have to pay dividend if there is profit, right? So they want to take that advantage of like taking money from equity holders and not paying them rather than paying interest holders, and of course paying them at certain. At the same time, as a part of its renewed focus, the company was also interested in returning cash to its shareholder. With this goal in mind, Caterpillar announced in early 2014 plans for 10 billion stock buyout program that would expire in 2018. Of course, by reducing its outstanding equity, this buyback pushed its debt to equity ratio to 79% by the end of 2016. From 89, they reduced it to 79%. And then company, 79% ratio would still be too high. It was still high, and I think they worked later as well. However, if we examine Caterpillar's capital structure more in detail, some big soon became apparent that there is more here than meets the eye. At the year end, on a book value basis, debt was 49. Book on the basis of book value, debt was 49.5 billion. 49.5 billion, and equity was 13.1 billion. But according to its sales value or sales price, it was approximately how much was it was 49, it was 53.3 billion from the market price perspective. But one point, it's like there is always difference between book value and selling price, which runs in market, right? So according to the market, its debt equity was after up to in 2014, it was 48 and 52, but according to book value it was 79 and 21, right? Yeah, 21%, right? So there is a difference between book value and selling price, so which was considerably lower than 79%. This helps explain why the company continued to have an A bond rating. So their bond rating was always E. I don't know the criteria of A bond rating, right? We have to search into R&D for a while. Caterpillar and other companies can finance with either debt or equity. Is one better than the other? If so, should firm finance either with the debt or equity? Now these are the questions we are going to solve in this question. Caterpillar and other companies can finance with either debt or equity. Two options are there, debt or equity. Is one better than other? Which one is better, debt or equity? If so, should firms finance either two? So which method we should select? Shall we raise our capital through debt, or shall we raise our capital through equity? Or if best solution is some mix, there is definitely a mix which is the optimal solution. And what is the optimal mix? How much debt and how much equity? Now when you make a coffee, right, when you make Americano, isn't it, there is a fixed amount of coffee you must have, fixed amount of water you must have, correct? In the case of cappuccino, you must have fixed amount of coffee, fixed amount of milk, and fixed amount of water, and that is optimal mix. The cafes which produce finest coffee around, they have wonderful beans, number one. Second, they know how to put that proportion in exact amount, right? You might have your favorite, maybe Red Mont, maybe Himalayan Java, maybe Marriott, right? Wherever you have your coffee, so you might like that because of the region that is the original one which was mixed. So like that, like the coffee, to make a latte, to make cappuccino, to make Americano, there is a certain mix that is called optimum mix of that coffee. Likewise, our company also has, like the coffee, optimal mix. We have to have certain amount of debt and we have to have certain amount of equity, so that our company will have that wonderful flavor of low cost and high quality. So these are the things which we are going to consider. So any confusion, anything, thought process you want to share? Any confusion, section B? Anything you want to add, or shall I move on to next slide?
No confusion.
Okay, thank you, Arsena. Okay, no confusion. Then let me move on to the next one. Content. So the total content of these chapters are, okay, one is capital structure, second business and financial risk, determining optimal capital structure theory, what happened in the past, what are the theories around, checklist for capital structure decisions, like what are the things we most like tick, and according to that checklist we prepare. Finally, variations in capital structure. So first we discuss capital structure. So when you finish this chapter, you should be able to please ask yourself, come back to this slide, and if you can answer all these questions, then you have understood this chapter, debt versus equity. Explain why there is difference in firms' capital structure when measured on a book value or market value basis or a target basis. So why there is a difference between book value and market value according to the capital structure? So I think you might know the answer already. We have we have already discussed about it. Second, discuss between business risk and financial risk, and explain the effects that debt financing has on firm's expected return on and risk. We are going to study about business risk and financial risk. There are two kind of risk. We also discussed about market risk and risk premium, isn't it, in risk and return. So there was certain level of risk which was inherent, we can do nothing about it, that is called market risk. And apart from that, there was risk premium, which is always above the risk premium, right? And we can reduce that risk through diversification of portfolio. Like that, our market risk here is called business risk. Above the market risk there is financial risk, and it is diversifiable, means it is controllable. Financial risk comes from use of debt financing. The chances of firm to bankrupt is one of the risk which is imposed by debt financing, which comes along with debt financing. Third, discuss the analytical framework used when determining optimal capital mix. So what would be the proper that in that coffee, like the coffee, right? What would be appropriate water and coffee? What would be the appropriate debt and equity, right? And what would be the framework of that, right? Framework or guidelines or that kind of point. Final, discuss capital structure theory. Use it to explain why firm in different industries. Again, different industry have, like automobiles industry might have different kind of capital structure, airlines industry might have different kind of structure, telecom business might have different kind of structure. So we will understand exactly why different kind of industries like telecom, like insurance sector, banking sector, like different kind of manufacturing sector, different kind of sector have different capital structure. Why do they have that? We'll understand that as well. So these are the objectives of the chapter. Okay. So let us move on with slide 6.1. So first is capital structure. A firm's capital structure is defined as percentage. Now again, structure means how much debt, how much equity. You have understood that, right? Water and coffee. Coffee being debt, it's black, right? Water being equity, much healthier for the company. So optimal capital mix is mix of debt, preferred stock, and common equity. That now preferred stock is also covered under common equity. When you tell you equity, right? Usually it's under inside preferred stock as well. Although there is a difference between preferred stock and common stock. For preferred stock, you have to pay fixed amount of money. Okay, it's like interest in one part. It has both the features of debt and equity. Like you have to pay fixed amount of fixed amount of dividend for a preferred stock, whether you have loss or gain. For example, if you have 10% preferred stock which is issued, then you have to pay 10% anyway. But like equity, there is no hard and fast rule you have to pay in this year. There is no hard and fast year you have to pay in this year. That 10% you can pay in next term. That 10% you can pay after 3 years, right? It's completely up to you, up to the company. So preferred stock brings feature of both worlds, right? Good and bad of debt and equity. So we include preferred stock in equity. Whenever we say debt equity, please note that equity preferred stock is under equity. Okay, so optimal capital structure is mix of debt, preferred stock, and common equity that maximizes. So what is the definition of optimal capital structure? Very important. Again, as a objective of financial person, what was our objective? Our objective was to maximize stocks intrinsic value. To maximize stocks intrinsic value. It was our objective from capital budgeting, from introduction to corporate finance, from risk and return to today in this learning outcome as well, because our objective is same. We want to maximize stocks intrinsic value anyway. And second, as how can it be possible? How can we increase stocks intrinsic value? Our stocks intrinsic value, please note, our stock's intrinsic value automatically increases, maximizes if our weighted average cost of capital or our cost of capital is low, right? If we earn 1 lakh rupees and our expenditure is 20,000, what does it mean is that if we reduce our expenditure from 20,000 to 10,000, it means that it will definitely increase our profit or value, which remains, right? Our value remains. If we earn 100, if we spend 20, right, 80 is left. If we spend 100, if we 10, then 90 is left. So it increases the value as we decrease our WACC as well. That is another way to look at. So what happens to maximize intrinsic value? We minimize weighted average cost of capital or capital. So third, how the capital structure be measured? Should we work with book value or market value? So conflicting theories are there. Shall we work in book value or market value? That is one big question. Another $1 million question is that how can we measure our capital structure? Okay, so any confusion in this slide, capital structure? I think there must be no confusion. Okay, so next one, business risk and financial risk. In the previous chapter, we discussed about standalone risk and portfolio context, right? We discussed about standalone risk. It was risk for one shares. Portfolio, when we had that jungle, it was for leopard only. We had jungle and there was leopard, elephant and buffalo, right? And in that jungle, what is the risk of that? We also understood difference between diversifiable risk and market risk. We understood market risk can be done nothing. This one was market risk, and apart from that, it was diversifiable risk. For diversifiable risk, we could increase portfolio number and the risk was reducing like this, which is measured by beta coefficient. Beta coefficient usually measures market risk. It does. We introduced two new dimensions of risk: business risk and financial risk. Financial risk is simply because of addition of debt. Business risk is like market risk, is inherent. You can do nothing about it. Inherent according to the type of business or nature of business. Okay, so as variety of business has variety of risk, different kind of risk. So this one is business risk. Let's discuss about business risk and financial risk in detail. So business risk is single most important determinant of capital structure. It represents the amount of risk that is inherent. Naturally, it's there in the firm's operation, even if you use no debt financing. In this case, whether you use debt financing or not, whether you have 100% equity or 50% equity or you have 80% equity, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. Why? Because you have this business risk inherently present. Naturally, it's there in the business. You can do nothing about it, right? So that is called business risk, some risk which is always there. Second, again, standard deviation. Please note that to calculate any risk in any terminology in our whole finance chapter, we always use standard deviation, right? Standard deviation. Standard deviation is godmother or godfather of risk measurement in these indices, right? So we use standard deviation every time if you hear the term risk, you please understand that it's standard deviation. And by the term standard deviation, always remember this graph. Please always remember this graph. Wider the spread, higher the risk. Smaller the spread, lower the risk, right? Always understand this is the risk, right? What is the risk of raining today? What is the risk of raining today? Right? Risk of raining today is maybe 50%. The risk of raining today is 5%, right? So what is it? Your risk is widespread. You had a wide array of. If you tell that it's risky, it's absolute 100%, it is going to rain, and then it's absolute, your average is also 100%, then you have no standard deviation at all. It rained, right? So that is one example, like happening or non-happening of the event, and that spread is called standard deviation. So whenever risk is mentioned, this is one of the shortcut as well for you. Whenever term you hear the term risk, always associate it with standard deviation, like how much is there a chance of happening or non-happening of the event. Usually it doesn't tell you happening of the event, it tells you how much chance is there of not happening of the event, right? So not happening of the event spread is this much, right? So wider this graph, higher the risk. Smaller the graph, lower the risk. So common measure is standard deviation of firm. Firm's return on invested capital, ROIC. Return on invested capital, ROIC. How much money, how much capital you have invested in the business, that is called ROIC. Return on invested capital. Now total invested capital may have debt and equity, or must have debt and equity both, because you have as a capital, what is the capital? Capital is both equity plus debt, correct? So what is the formula? Return, by as name itself is enough. Return on invested capital. On invested capital means in the denominator invested capital. Return means in the numerator return. Done? Invested capital, you see total invested capital in the denominator. In the numerator, return means earning before interest and tax. The portion of government is taken away by government, one minus tax. Government takes its own pie. Whatever is remaining return, after that one slice is taken away by the government, out of that whole pie, that is our return for debt and equity. And if we divide that with invested capital, debt and equity, we get our return on invested capital, ROIC. Greater the uncertainty there is about future CBIT and ROIC, greater the business risk, right? Greater the uncertainty, greater the risk. Now one of the examples, one of the prominent examples, I did not know about these names, Kraft, Heinz and Pillsbury. Today's food processor like Kraft, Heinz and Pillsbury, have you heard about it? I never had heard about it, these examples. So there are food processors like Kraft, Heinz and Pillsbury, which illustrate companies with low business risk. Food business, like if there is COVID situation, then you must eat, right? If Nepal goes in war with China, you must eat. If there will be huge famine, you have to eat anyway, right? So this is the basic need, right? And usually business, food processing business, usually their business do not go down, although its growth might be low, although its cost might be high, right? Its demand is its risk is usually low in case of food processing business, right? But in the case of other manufacturers or cyclical manufacturers like steel companies as well as new startup companies, or which are new startup companies, right? Their risk is usually high. Their standard deviation or risk is usually high. Why? Because they might not sell, they might not have market, people might not go towards buying steel. Now people might not invest in steel companies. Why? Because they are hungry, they want to first eat, and it's recession, right? In 2000 recession, what happened? In 2008 recession, thousands and thousands of companies had to shut down, and these were not food processors or your agricultural companies or companies which covered basic need. In those times, when in tough times, what happens? People get away with their luxuries. Now you not, like, you are hungry and you don't want to like use iPhone, isn't it? if you have got an option of eating and using iPhone when you are hungry, right? So you will not want to use iPhone, right? Rather you would choose food, correct? So in case of, like, it also according to the human nature as well, company performs like that, right? So food processing companies usually have low risk, and these steel manufacturing companies or other cyclical manufacturers or entrepreneurs, right, these have high risk. Any confusion in this? So if you do not know, okay, thank you for responding, Archana. Okay, so I did not discuss about this slide. We have taken a graph from 2009 to 2017, 9 years, and out of those we have ROIC. This is familiar graph, isn't it? We have seen this graph in earlier times as well. First, in 2009, our return was negative 12.4%. In 2010, it was 12. It went up by up to 21.9. Again, it went down to 6, and then again it went up, it's dipped, and in 2017 it reached to 18%. Now how do we calculate average? We take all the return, divide by number of samples, 9, and then we get our 9%. Then what is the standard deviation? We calculate standard deviation, we get our standard deviation of 12%. So this is one example of plotting of graph, an indicator of business risk. How do we calculate risk? This is standard deviation in the first place is business risk, 12.9%. Okay, uncertainty of not having this 9%. Okay, I hope you are clear. Okay, so next slide. Factors affect risk. What are the factors? Competition. Can you give one example of competition? Okay, so one emerging competition, one example is CG Internet is coming up with huge turnaround of internet, right? It's giving, I think, 120 Mbps, 120 Mbps in 999 rupees. Yeah. So Praveen, it is a classic example of failure of CG, I would say. Why? Like
no existing customer.
When you are going to penetrate, Azur? Oh yeah. So when you are going to penetrate the market, you give no time to competitors. Okay. Like in India, what happened? Jiole overnight 1 or 2 days, it struck back, it struck in the market, and what happened? Reliance had to close down. Reliance, Vodafone, they went away, right? They had to close their business. So India ma bhaku that surprise element bhayen. Now, as Praveen was mentioning, Subisule ल्याइसक्यो के है अब Subisuको customers they will not lure towards CG मा आउँदैन नि त हैन. So that was that.
I think the connectivity also उसको CG को भन्दा Subisi को अझ हुन्छ. यता 120 जस्तो लाथे उता 150 कति के रनमा छ.
Yeah. So again, now Subisu might be more prepared than our CG, हेर्नु न.
अनि सो इभन CG को बोगस छ नि तपाईको उ नि प्राइस प्लान नै भन्ने भने चाहिँ खास गरी when it comes from technical aspect त्यो 120 MBS भन्ने मात्र हो के तर त्यो भन्दा झन् जुन चाहिँ डेडिकेटेड लाइन र स्प्लिट फर्म भनेकोमा चाहिँ टोटली उ नै हुन्छ CG को.
Yeah, true. त्यो कम्पनीहरुमा डेडिकेटेड लाइन भनेर 2 Mbps दिरा हुन्छ, घरमा 40 Mbps भन्छ, चल्ने बेलामा युट्युबको भिडियो पनि चल्दैन हैन. समटाइम
डेडिकेटेड लाइन भएको हुँदैन, स्प्लिट फर्ममा हुन्छ. अनि लाइक इन गभर्नमेन्ट त्यसैले हो एनटीसीहरु हुन्छ गभर्नमेन्टको प्रिफरेन्स लिने कारण चाहिँ नेपालमा त्यो एउटै वायरमा हुन्छ नि कनेक्टिभिटीको त कति दिने भन्ने हुन्छ नि. प्राइभेट सेक्टरले चाहिँ जति आउँछ कस्टमर थपिन्छ एउटैमा जोडिदिँदै जान्छ, कनेक्टिभिटी दिँदै जान्छ. गभर्नमेन्टको चाहिँ सिलिङ लागेको हुन्छ. त्यसपछि चाहिँ उसमा डिरेक्टरसँग लिएर अनि फेरि नयाँ वायरिङ के त्यो वायरिङ पाइपलाइन हालेर चाहिँ बल्ल गर्ने भन्छ. त्यो कारणले अनि सुरुमा हो पछि त कामै छैन सही हो CG को पनि लेखिदिनु.
Okay, so let us see as a consumer of internet, let us have our fingers crossed है. के गर्नु त अब अहिले चाहिँ त्यो मैले सुने अनुसार चाहिँ त्यो उसमा ललितपुर एरियामा जौलाखेलको वरिपरि एरियाबाट सुरु गरे अरे, जौलाखेलबाट अरू 2-3वटा ठाउँ त्यसरी सुरु गर्ने भन्ने सुनेको थिए CG ले. बट या कम्पिटिसनको अब एक्जाम्पल भनेको या वी क्यान सी है यसमा. फ्र्याङ्कली दिस एक्जाम्पल इज क्लासिक एक्जाम्पल नेपालको मार्केटमा सुबिसु.
अनि सुन्नुस् न तपाईलाई उसको बारेमा थाहा छ ल्यान्डलाइनको बारेमा जुन चाहिँ एनटीसी त के रे सोलो प्रोवाइडर हैन नेपालमा मोनोपोली उनीहरुकोमा छ है.
पहिला युटीएल भन्ने थियो, आई थिंक दे क्लोज इट डाउन. युटीएल खासै चलेन अहिले. आई डोन्ट नो.
अनि
मलाई ठ्याक्कै चाहिँ थाहा छैन, ल्यान्डलाइन एनटिसी मात्रै जस्तो लाग्छ।
अरू प्रोभाइडरको त कुन चाहिँ छ र? तपाईँलाई के थाहा छ सोधे म त, मलाई नि थाहा नभई
ए
सोधे।
नो नो, यस्तो हो, टेलिकम बिजनेसमा चाहिँ देयर इज एनसेल एउटा, एनसेल अनि अर्को एनटिसी होइन, दुईटा, अनि स्मार्ट सेल कि के भन्ने नि आएको थियो। आइएम नट स्योर वेदर दे आर लाइक प्रपर कम्पनी अर नट।
यो
अनि
कम्पनी त छ।
अब कम्पनी छ अनि सिम कार्ड पनि बेचिरहेछ। एउटा एकजना भाइले नि युज गरिरहनु भएको थियो, भन्दै हुनुहुन्थ्यो राम्रै छ भन्नुहुन्थ्यो। बट द पोइन्ट इज अब सिजी टेलिकमले चाहिँ सिजी जसरी यो फेलियर त भन्दिनँ होइन, दे माइट गेट, दे माइट हेभ देयर ओन स्ट्राटेजी। सिजी इज गोइङ टु गेट लाइसेन्स है, मलाई जहाँसम्म लाग्छ, कङ्ग्रेसको गभर्मेन्ट छ होइन। सो सिजी माइट गेट लाइसेन्स फर टेलिकम। सो एनसेल, एनटिसी, सिजी तिनवटा हुन्छ होला। सो द्याट माइट सिजी अल्सो माइट ब्रिङ ल्यान्डलाइनहरू ल्याउँछ होला अपकमिङ टाइम्समा अकर्डिङ टु द्याट। सो हेरौँ, ल्यान्डलाइन त अहिले एनटिसीको मात्रै होला। So what happened, like CG at least forced Subisu to bring that 150 Mbps wala, you know.
150.
So that was one example. Yeah. Right. So that is one point of business risk. World link lai already risk bhako cha hai. I was even considering my internet of office, my internet of home, right? When things are changing, right? So competition always brings that huge business risk. Second, demand variability. Customers' demand might change, right? Like today we used to, first of all, we used to watch television, like this home like why? हाम्रो demand change भयो, we want to watch what? Netflix, होइन, स्ट्रिमिङहरू हेर्न चाहन्छौँ, लाइक फ्रेस कन्टेन्ट विच इज जस्ट रिलिज। त्यस्तो डिमान्ड भेरिएबिलिटी भएपछि द्याट माइट बी अनदर रिस्क। थर्ड, सेल्स प्राइस भेरिएबिलिटी। अगेन सेल प्राइस 999 मा इन्टरनेट और 1000 मा इन्टरनेट, राइट? सो प्राइस तल माथि हुँदाखेरि मेबी one certain portion भन्दा माथि, certain consumer only produce this product, but as you will change the price of sales price, then your market size will grow or it will shrink. It depends. Next, input cost variability. Raw materials which you purchase, for example, most of the raw material comes from India, China, right? And or even Thailand or third world countries. When these like corona ले गर्दा definitely our इनपुट कस्ट भनौँ न, यो इनपुट कस्ट भेरिएबिलिटीमा अलिकति चेन्ज आएको छ। कस्ट इज युजुअली हाई। अहिले हाम्रो ट्रेड डेफिसिट पनि इट्स बिगेस्ट देन एभर। पहिला चाहिँ घटेको थियो, बट इट्स बिगेस्ट देन एभर राइट नाउ। सो इनपुट कस्ट चेन्जेस बिकज अफ बोर्डर्स एन्ड लट अफ रिजन्स, राइट? र मेटेरियल माइट चेन्ज। नेपालमै फर इक्जाम्पल, नेपालले मार्बल इम्पोर्ट गर्थ्यो राजस्थानबाट, फर इक्जाम्पल नेपालमै मार्बल फर इक्जाम्पल बेच्यो भने what happens? Our input cost decreases, and that decreases our business risk. But what if Rajasthan tells us that we are not going to supply you any marble, then what we have to do? We have to seek from another source, which might be costly for us. Maybe we are going to bring Italian marble for our new infrastructures. So in that case, it imposes huge business risk. Second, product obsolescence. Another fifth one is product, how like product is working or not. Again, example of now internet modem जुन इन्टरनेटले दिन्छ है, वर्ल्ड लिङ्कहरू यिनीहरूले मोडेम दिन्छ। त्यो मोडेम कामै नगर्ने खालको मोडेम may expire in 3 months, say 4 months, त्यस्तो भयो भने it also imposes a huge risk. But if your product is stable, if your product is durable, right? If your product is durable, then your product obsolescence risk is low. थर्ड, फरेन रिस्क एक्सपोजर। युएसमा 102 हुन्थ्यो पहिला, हामी सानोमा कहिले 10 years ago, 8 years ago होला लगभग 102 103 थियो US dollar. If you had export business, right? Wow, you got in bonanza, right? You had a wonderful time. But if you had import business, what happened? You had to pay huge amount of money in the form of dollar currency, right? You had to pay that differential amount of how much? $18. अहिले 118 चलिरहेको होला डलर, 118 19 कति छ, right? So foreign exchange risk, it also imposes huge threat or business risk. Seventh, regulatory risk. We saw that example of nationalization of tutoring application, right? दुईजना मान्छे राति चट्ट पार्टी गरिरहनु भएको थियो, अब भोलि हामी बिलियनियर हुन्छ भनेर है, सबै कुरा ठिक थियो, एभ्रिथिङ वाज डुइङ ग्रेट, देयर इयर्स अफ स्वेट एन्ड ब्लड एन्ड वाट हार्ड वर्क पेड अफ, अनि सबै रेडी थियो प्लेटफर्म। अनि भोलि त न्युज के आउँछ भन्दाखेरि चाइनिज गभर्मेन्टले अब तपाईँको नेसनलाइज गरिदियो बिजनेस, गन सबै, रेगुलेटरी रिस्क एन्ड लिगल एक्सपोजर। लास्ट, द एक्सटेन्ट टु विच कस्ट आर फिक्स्ड। वान अफ द बिगेस्ट किलर अफ बिजनेस भनेको चाहिँ फिक्स कस्ट हो है। यो तपाईँहरू है कसैलाई है तपाईँको कम्पनी किन डुबो भन्दाखेरि म्याक्सिममले चाहिँ फिक्स कस्टले भन्नुहुन्छ है। रेन्ट धान्नै सकेन, तपाईँहरूको साथीहरू नै हुनुहुन्छ होला नि 5-6 जना, हामीले रेस्टुरेन्ट किनेको थियो, त्यो चलाउन खोजेको, रेन्टै धान्न सकेन। सो फिक्स कस्टले किलर हुन्छ। इट माइट बी इन द फर्म अफ स्यालेरी, इट माइट बी इन द फर्म अफ रेन्ट, राइट। फिक्स कस्ट अगेन मैले अब फिक्स कस्ट के हो भन्न पर्दैन होला तपाईँहरूलाई। देन अल्सो इफ आई वान्ट टु से इन सिम्पल टर्म्स, एनी कस्ट यु क्यानट एभोइड। सेल जतिसुकै गर्नु होइन, 1 लाखवटा चिया बेच्नु कि एउटा चिया बेच्नु, इट डजन्ट म्याटर, यु हेभ टु पे दिस फिक्स कस्ट एनीवे होइन। भेरिएबल कस्ट त 5वटा चिया बेच्दा त्यति नै लाग्छ होइन, इट चेन्जेस एलोङ विथ द सेल्स युनिट। 1000वटा चिया बेच्दा त्यही अनुसार हुन्छ। बट इन द केस अफ फिक्स कस्ट वाट ह्यापन्स, यु हेभ टु पे द्याट एनीवे, राइट। सो वान अफ द बिगेस्ट किलर अफ न्यू एन्टरप्रिनरसिप भेन्यू, यो नयाँ नयाँ एन्टरप्रिनरसिपहरू हुन्छ नि, त्यसको चाहिँ फिक्स कस्ट। तपाईँहरूलाई नै होला नि कसैले सुन्नु भएको, किन डुबो द बिजनेस भन्दा फिक्स कस्टले भनेको के सुन्नु भएको छ, रेन्टले, स्यालेरीले, यताउति। है, सो यु क्यान सेयर योर एक्सपिरियन्स।
हाम्रो
हजुर,
रिकरिङ कस्ट चाहिँ
रिकरिङ कस्ट भनेको
रिकरिङ कस्ट हुन्छ नि, एउटा सर्टेन फ्रेमसम्म चाहिँ हुन्छ नि, त्यो ब्र्याकेट लागेको हुन्छ नि।
अब एक्ज्याक्टली आई डिड नट अन्डरस्ट्यान्ड होइन, इफ यु गिभ मी स्पेसिफिक एक्जाम्पल आई माइन्ड।
प्राइस रेन्जकोमा रिकरिङ लागेको हुन्छ नि सर, त्यो भन्नाले यति सर्टेनसम्म। हाम्रो जस्तै यो इन्कम ट्याक्सको कुरामा छ नि, 1%, 10%, 15 अनि कति 20, 25 जस्तो छ नि, त्यो ब्र्याकेटमा रिकरिङ लाग्छ नि। त्यस्तोको चाहिँ त्यस्तो कस्टलाई चाहिँ के भनेर राख्ने केमा, जस्तै कुनैको त त्यसरी
ओके। सो यस्तो छ, अब आई थिङ्क अब यो गाडीहरूको हुन्छ नि 160 सीसी, 160 सीसीलाई यति, योभन्दा माथिलाई यति ट्याक्स भने हुन्छ, त्यो चाहिँ लगभग फिक्स्ड कस्टै भयो। तपाईँको त्यो एसेट होइन्जेल यु हेभ टु पे द्याट एनीवे होइन। तर हाम्रो इन्कम ट्याक्स चाहिँ भेरिएबल कस्टै मान्नुपर्छ। वाइ भन्दाखेरि इफ यु अर्न देन यु पे के युजली होइन। जस्तै इफ यु अर्न, यस्तो छ अब ठ्याक्कै ट्याक्सै भन्नुभयो है।
अनि त्यो ठ्याक्क रिकरिङ त्यसरी आउने भएर चाहिँ ट्याक्स मात्र होइन, त्यो अरू कुरामा नै हुन्छ नि, एप्लिकेसन।
आई अन्डरस्टुड योर पोइन्ट है। रिकरिङ कस्टलाई चाहिँ अब डिभाइड गर्ने, अब सेमी भेरिएबल भन्नुभएको कि रिकरिङ।
दोज बिजनेस के विच आर स्केलेबलमा रेन्जमा गएपछि एकदम रिकरिङ बढ्दै जान्छ नि।
Oh yeah. So you mean to say if 1000 semi variable cost भन्नुभएको जस्तो लाग्यो मलाई, 1000 युनिटसम्म इलेक्ट्रिसिटी लाइक 200 रुपियाँ फिक्स्ड होइन, अनि 2000 भयो भने चाहिँ 2000 प्लस 8 रुपिस पर युनिट यस्तो हुन्छ नि होइन। 3000 भयो भने अगेन 3000 फिक्स्ड होइन, प्लस 3 पर युनिट, के अरे सरी 9 पर युनिट, यस्तो भन्नुभयो हो।
हजुर सर, यस्तै तर
होइन। सो एउटा स्केल बढ्दै गएपछि यु हेभ टु पे। यो इन दिस पोर्सन होइन, यो चाहिँ अब तपाईँहरूले कस्ट एकाउन्टिङहरूमा पढ्नुहुन्छ, त्यसमा चाहिँ यु हेभ टु डिभाइड, सेग्रिगेट बिट्विन फिक्स कस्ट र सेमी भेरिएबल कस्ट के। अनि त्यो पोर्सन छुट्याएर अनि वी डु आवर फाइनेन्सियल एनालाइसिस। यो छुट्याउनै पर्छ, फिक्स कस्ट र सेमी भेरिएबल, यसको कति फिक्स्ड हो कति भेरिएबल। अनि यो चाहिँ जेनरली भन्नै मिल्दैन, यो चाहिँ तपाईँको स्पेसिफिक बिजनेस यु हेभ टु सिट डाउन एन्ड स्पेसिफिक बिजनेसको कस्तो पर्फर्मेन्स भएको छ, कस्तो रिपोर्टहरू आएको छ, त्यो रिपोर्ट अनुसारले अनि यु हेभ टु क्यालकुलेट दोज। अनि त्यो भएपछि मात्रै यु क्यान क्यालकुलेट योर अपरेटिङ लेभरेज के। द्याट इज भेरी इन्ट्रेस्टिङ पोइन्ट, लाइक एज प्रवीण वाज मेन्सनिङ फर द क्लास है। सो जस्तै 1000 रुपिजसम्मको युनिटसम्मको इलेक्ट्रिसिटीलाई होइन, 1000 अब हुन त सेल्स बढाउँदै गएपछि इलेक्ट्रिसिटी पनि बढ्दै जान्छ भनौँ, किनभने मोर प्रोडक्सन हुन्छ। सो 1000 युनिटसम्म 400 रुपिज फिक्स्ड होइन, 400 सक्यो, इट्स फिक्स्ड के, डन। अब 2000 युनिट भयो भने 400 फिक्स्ड भयो प्लस 8 रुपिज पर युनिट होइन। इलेक्ट्रिसिटीमा छ नि यस्तो अहिले पनि यो के अब नयाँ हाम्रो इलेक्ट्रिसिटी मिनिस्टरले भन्दै हुनुहुन्छ अलि हामी सहुलियत दिन्छौँ के भन्दै हुनुहुन्छ सो 3000 युनिट भयो भने मेबी 400 प्लस 60 रुपिज पर युनिट हैन हो यो दिस एक्जाम्पल अफ फिक्स्ड हो कि यो हैन यो भनेको त जति तपाई प्रोडक्सन गर्नुहुन्छ जति युज गर्नुहुन्छ त्यो अनुसार हुने भयो यसमा फिक्स्ड पनि छ 400 रुपिज एन्ड यु हैव variable as well okay this is also called in other term semi variable cost है so in this case सिधै तपाईले यहाँ त्यो केस चाहिँ सिधै यो अपरेटिङ लेभरेजमा हाल्न मिल्दैन के यसमा सिधै हाल्न मिल्दैन त्यो केसमा चाहिँ छुट्याउनु पर्छ अकॉर्डिङ टु बिजनेस है सो क्लियर प्रवीण
यस सर
ओके
अनि सर जुन चाहिँ
Okay,
हेजिङको
so-
कुराहरू हुन्छ नि अहिले तपाईले अघि भन्नुभएको थियो जुन चाहिँ इम्पोर्ट छ एक्सपोर्ट छ भन्ने हुन्छ नि डलर तल माथि
Yeah.
भयो होइन त्यसमा हेजिङ गरेर राखेको हुन्छ नि अनि त्यसलाई चाहिँ फिक्स कस्ट मान्ने कि के मान्ने हेजिङको कुरालाई
No, if you hedge, if you do not hedge, then अब again अब टेक्निकल होला कतिजनालाई हेजिङ भनेको चाहिँ जस्तै फर एक्जाम्पल इफ यु हेभ एक्सपोर्ट बिजनेस आजको डेटमा डलर चाहिँ 118 रुपिज चलिरहेछ भने यु गो विथ द ब्याङ्कसँग गएर के भन्ने भन्दाखेरि आई वान बाई अब यो अलि कम्प्लिकेटेड हुन्छ आई वान फिक्स माई रेट भनौँ न आई वान फिक्स माई रेट टु 118 भन्ने कि मैले भोलि पनि 118 तिर्छु पर्सि पनि 118 तिर्छु निकर्सी पनि 118 तिर्छु मलाई चाहिँ यति डलर चाहिँ 118 मा दिनु भनेर एउटा सर्टेन डलर मेबी $1000 चाहिँ मलाई 118 मा दिनु भनेर ब्याङ्कसँग कुरा गर्ने त्यो भइसकेर ब्याङ्कसँग हेजिङ गर्यो भने चाहिँ इट्स फिक्स्ड कस्ट हैन सो गरे छैन भने चाहिँ इट्स भेरिएबल कस्ट त्यो रिस्कमै आउँछ कि तपाईको फरेन एक्सपोजर रिस्क एक्सपोजर अब यस्तो भयो एज अ अब हामीले गर्ने काम भनेको चाहिँ फरेन रिस्क एक्सपोजर घटाउने कसरी भन्दा हेजिङ गर्ने बिकज वी डोन्ट वान्ट द्याट क्रैप के वी डोन्ट वान्ट टु सिट इन गुगल अर सिट इन द्याट एक्सचेन्जमा अनि दिनदिनै त्यो हेरेर अनि बिजनेसलाई के भयो भनेर वी डु नट वान्ट टु टेक आवर एटेन्सन टु द्याट पोइन्ट सो वाट डु वी डु वी जस्ट हेज इट डन तल आयो नि बढी गयो नि वी पे 118 हाम्रो क्यालकुलेसन स्ट्रेट फर डन सो इट्स फिक्स कस्ट हैन सो अब नगर्ने हैन कतिवटा बिजनेसले गरेकै हुँदैन सानो बिजनेसहरू हुन्छ नि यो अचारहरू एक्सपोर्ट गर्छ सानो स्केलको अनि लुगाहरू अब यो अलैँचीहरू एक्सपोर्ट गर्छ हैन उहाँहरूले गर्नुहुन्न नि त हेजिङ अब यत्रो कन्सेप्ट थाहा छैन उहाँहरूलाई अनि त्यो केसेसहरूमा दे आर लाइक एक्सपोज टु फरेन रिस्क एक्सपोजर हैन फरेन रिस्क एक्सपोजर डोनाल्ड ट्रम्प आयो सत्तामा ऊ आउने बित्तिकै तपाईँको डलर कहाँ पुग्यो बिकज bring American back from China अनि let's produce from America के भन्न थाल्यो त्यो भएपछि के भयो डलरहरू माथि जान थाल्यो सो इट्स अहिले अल टाइम हाई 118 120 यस्तैमा चलिरहेछ yeah so hedging is also in case of hedging also you might have to distinguish whether it is fixed or variable hedge गर्यो भने फिक्स्ड भयो गरेन भने इट्स भेरिएबल ओके प्रवीण
यस सर
ओके सो यस्तो हुन्छ तपाईको है अब यो झन् इन्ट्रेस्टिङ छ के तपाईले अझै डेल्भिन गर्नुभयो भने बिलियन्स अफ रुपीज है नेपालबाट मिलियन्स एन्ड बिलियन्स अफ रुपीज आर हेज्ड के ब्याङ्क्सहरूले त्यो फरेन रिजर्भहरू जुन राखेको हुन्छ नि त्यसमा ह्युज अमाउन्ट अफ मनी स्ट्यान्डर्ड चार्टर्ड ब्याङ्कले लिड गर्छ यसको चाहिँ हैन सबै ब्याङ्कहरूले अनि स्ट्यान्डर्ड चार्टरसँग गरेर फरेन पेमेन्टहरू गरे हुन्छ त्यसमा एकदम ठुलो बिजनेस छ कि हेजिङमा इभन स्मल फ्र्याक्सनले एफेक्ट गर्छ कि ठुलो बिजनेसहरू झन्
ग्रिनलेज ल्याएकै नेपालमा त्यसको कारण होइन र फरेक्स मेन्टेन गर्नलाई चाहिँ ग्रिनलेजले लिड गरे त हो उसमा नेपालमा अनि त्यसपछि त अब उसले स्ट्यान्डर्डले पछि चाहिँ टेक ओभर गरेपछि त स्ट्यान्डर्डै भयो तर फरेक्स नेपालमा सिकाएकै उसले भन्छ नि के अरे स्ट्यान्डर्डले भन्छ होइन
Yeah, like you can go anywhere in the world and you can find Standard Chartered Bank. And you can open account in Standard Chartered Bank if you want to get world-class service. Hey, by the way, profitability no like Standard Chartered Bank or you feel good. You feel good. Interest rate कम होला हैन अनि मैले अलिकति डिभिएट गरे टपिक चाहिँ सो कमिङ ब्याक यस स्ट्यान्डर्ड चार्टर्ड बैंक टुक द लिड अहिले पनि फरेन हाम्रो हुँदैन कमोडिटी मार्केट अहिले त ब्यान्ड छ अस्ति भर्खर नियमन निकायले 50 करोड कि कति चाहिँ पैसा राखेपछि बल्ल तपाईले लाइसेन्स पाउनुहुन्छ भन्दै थियो है सो कमोडिटी मार्केट अहिले पहिले मर्केन्टाइल एक्सचेन्ज अनि तपाईको DCX हरू हुन्थ्यो कमोडिटी मार्केटहरू ट्रेड गर्नलाई अहिले कम्प्लिटली इलिगल बनाए बिचमा अहिले भर्खरै 1 मन्थ अगो बजेटले ल्यायो क्या बजेटले अब यो गर्यो भने चाहिँ कमोडिटी मार्केटमा गर्न मिल्छ भन्थ्यो देयर इज नो फ्युचर पेमेन्ट फरेक्स तपाईको कल अप्सन पुट अप्सन छैन कन्सेप्ट इट्स ओन्ली इन ब्याङ्क्स अहिले ब्याङ्कहरूले मात्रै गरिरहेको छ
कमोडिटी भनेको सर डेरिभेटिभ मार्केटै हैन
डेरिभेटिभ मार्केट या डेरिभेटिभ मार्केट सो कमोडिटी अल्सो कल डेरिभेटिभ मार्केट जहाँ चाहिँ तपाईँको फिजिकल डेलिभरी हुँदैन होइन फर एन एक्जाम्पल तपाईँले गोल्ड किन्नुभयो होइन गोल्ड किनेपछि के हुन्छ तपाईँलाई दिन्छ नि त होइन 5 तोला किन्नुभयो भने 5 तोला जोखेर तपाईँलाई दिन्छ गोल्ड है द्याट इज फिजिकल डेलिभरी द्याट इज नर्मल मार्केट अब कमोडिटी मार्केटमा यु बाई गोल्ड 5 तोला अरू त्यहाँ आउन्सेज के भन्छ आउन्सेजहरू भन्छ है यु बाई द्याट मच यु डु नट गेट डेलिभरी के होइन सो यु आर प्लेइङ विथ द फ्युचर यु आर प्लेइङ लाइक अप्सन्स फ्युचर्स यो भयो भने एकोर्डिङ टु यर इन्फर्मेसन के यो भयो भने म यो गर्छु टाइपमा के सो again Praveen like if you want to delve into to risky markets है अनि you can take any amount of risk 200% 2000% risk लिन नि सकिन्छ के so 10,000 ले you can earn 1 lakh as well within 2-3 seconds in commodity market right but the risk is like unlimited and you must have that another thing I think नेपालमा within 1-2-3 years चाहिँ आउनु पर्छ anyway because it's all around the world नेपालमा आउनुपर्छ बिकज पहिला थियो मैले नि कति 3-4 इयर्स मैले नि कारोबार गरेको थिएँ अनि लाइक दे वर लाइक
नेपाल डेरिभेटिभ मार्केट भन्ने उ कम्पनीले लिड गराएको थियो हैन त्यो टाइममा
मर्केन्टाइल एक्सचेन्ज त्यो लिडर चाहिँ मलाई अब नेपाल डेरिभेटिभ चाहिँ थाहा भएन कुन हो होइन डिसिएक्स मर्केन्टाइल एक्सचेन्ज अनि अर्को खोइ के एउटा अर्को कम्पनी पनि थियो बट लिडर वाज मर्केन्टाइल एक्सचेन्ज बट एज एक्ट वाज साइलेन्ट बट अकर्डिङ टु द एक्ट इट वाज नट डन के So let's move on with the content, right? The business risk. These are all the business risk. These are 8 different factors. Okay. So moving on, let us take an example how that operating leverage affects practically. So first case, our plan in the case of plan A, we have 25,000 fixed cost. In the plan B, we have 70,000. Selling price is same, right? Now let me ask you one ekdam ramailo question, right? So can you see any pattern यो दुईटामा भेरिएबल कस्ट 1.5 छ यसमा 1 छ हैन भेरिएबल कस्ट घटिरहेको छ है सो कैन यू सी एनी पैटर्न इन दिस एक्जाम्पल whether it is true in other companies as well if you want to generalize as a finance student or finance personnel यो डेटा मिलेको छ कि छैन लट अफ टाइम्स यु क्यान फाइन्ड के अब हुँदै गएपछि तपाईहरुले बुझ्दै जानुहुन्छ के Okay, so let me tell. Praveen, you want to try?
So के भन्नुभएको कुरा बुझेन
ए मैले भने चाहिँ सो फिक्स्ड कस्ट 25,000 बाट 7,000 भयो सेलिङ प्राइस 2 फिक्स छ भेरिएबल कस्ट 1.5 बाट 1 भयो सो इज देयर एनी प्याटर्न बिट्विन दिस टु डेटा कम्पेयर गर्दाखेरि ए मा यो भयो त्यही भएर बी मा यो भयो ए मा यो भयो त्यही भएर बी मा यो भयो काइन्ड के or ए मै यो भएर यो भयो भन्ने टाइपमा के can you see any pattern in this data changes between fixed cost and variable cost
तपाईको युनिट अफ प्रोडक्सन मा छ नि हैन र
yeah it's in unit of production yeah so one term which we were discussing अलिकति अगाडि economies of scale भन्छ नि or one thing please observe whenever you increase fixed cost okay whenever you increase fixed cost selling price the same भयो maybe selling price पनि change भएको भए यो 2.1 भएको भए नि we will not be surprised के why because हामीले ल नयाँ मसिन ल्याएर क्वालिटी बढायो या ब्रान्डिङ गर्यो अनि हाम्रो सेलिङ प्राइस बढ्यो बट अब्जर्भ
भेरिएबल कस्ट घट्नु भनेको प्रोडक्सन इन्क्रिज गरेर इकोनोमिज अफ स्केल थ्रुबाट भेरिएबल कस्ट घट्नु हो के हैन सर
एक्ज्याक्टली शेखर वाओ
गर्नलाई त स्पेसहरु एड अप गर्नु पर्यो मसिन्सहरु एड अप गर्नु त्यसले फिक्स्ड कस्ट बढाउने हो
या perfect answer now thank you so much that is त्यो अब तपाईहरु सिजन्ड हुँदै गएपछि त्यस्तो आन्सर आउँछ के थ्यांक यू सो मच यो बढ्दै गएपछि फिक्स्ड कस्ट वाइ फिक्स्ड कस्ट बढ्यो हामीले ठुलो ठाउँ लियो हामीले एउटा मसिन किन्यो हैन तपाईँको मसिनको भाडा लाग्न थाल्यो, मसिन रेन्टमा ल्यायो, या हामीले स्पेस ठुलो लियो होइन, एउटा त्यो इकोनोमी हामीले बढाउने बित्तिकै वाट ह्यापन्स भन्दाखेरि युजुअली वाइ डु वी डु द्याट टु इन्क्रिज प्रोडक्सन, एज शेखर वाज मेन्सनिङ है। प्रोडक्सन बढ्ने बित्तिकै भेरिएबल कस्ट घट्छ नि त। वाइ? स्केल बढ्ने बित्तिकै, राइट, एज प्रवीण वाज डिस्कसिङ अलिकति अगाडि, स्केल बढ्ने बित्तिकै वाट ह्यापन्स, स्केल बढ्ने बित्तिकै योर भेरिएबल कस्ट डिक्रिजेज। एक प्लेट मोमो है, तपाईँहरू भरे गएर मोमो पसलमा सोध्नु भए पनि हुन्छ, यहाँ रेस्टुरेन्टमा एक प्लेट मोमो बेच्नु, 5 प्लेट मोमो बेच्नु र 100 प्लेट मोमो बेच्दाखेरि 100 प्लेट मोमो बेच्दा ह्युज एमाउन्ट अफ फाइदा हुन्छ, बट 1 प्लेट र 5 प्लेट मोमो बेच्दाखेरि भेरिएबल कस्टै ह्युज हुन्छ के। किन? वेस्टेज बढी हुन्छ, अनि त्यो यसको वेस्ट यता युज गर्न नपाउने हुन्छ, अनि भेरिएबल कस्ट बढी हुन्छ के त्यो कम स्केलमा। सो दिस इज द्याट एक्जाम्पल यसको केसमा है। सो प्लान ए 25,000, प्लान बी 70। सो अपरेटिङ ब्रेक इभन, यस
हाम्रो के छ यो उसमा इकोनोमिक अफ स्केलमा के जहिले पनि स्याचुरेसनको कुरा चाहिँ जहिले पनि कन्सर्न आउँछ नि। अनि हाउ डु क्यालकुलेट, त्यसको लागि चाहिँ सेटअप चाहिँ हुन्छ नि, त्यो कसरी क्यालकुलेसन हुन्छ?
saturation, you mean to say that at one point it doesn't matter भन्ने पोइन्टमा?
होइन, त्यो भन्दा नि स्याचुरेसनमा पुग्यो नि, अब चाहिँ यति पुग्यो फिक्स मानम, डिमान्ड चाहिँ मानम यसकै कति छ हौ, 50,000 70,000 छ हो तलको क्यालकुलेट। इभन 60 आइदियो अरे हो, तर 10,000 त मेरो उसमै बढ्न जान्छ नि, त्यसको लागि त एकदम त्यो कस्ट पर युनिट सिक्ने भने त 10,000 को चाहिँ 60 मा छ भनेपछि मार्केटमा डिमान्ड चाहिँ, तर 10,000 को लागि चाहिँ केटा जुन चाहिँ 60 फाइन्ड गर्ने हुन्छ नि, त्यसको ओभरहेड कस्टलाई कसरी ब्रेक गर्छ उनीहरूले, त्यो क्यालकुलेसन चाहिँ क्वाइट टफ हो होइन इकोनोमिक अफ स्केलमा चाहिँ। यसलाई चाहिँ कस
I did not get you. जस्तै 70,000 we are selling 70,000 प्रोडक्ट होइन, डिमान्ड इज 70,000 होइन, त्यसमा के भन्नुभयो 10,000?
होइन, डिमान्ड इज 60,000, तर हाम्रो दुईटा गर्दाखेरि पर कस्ट त 1 पर युनिट आएको छ नि अहिले त, भनेपछि 10,000 त एक्स्ट्रा प्रोडक्सन गर्नै पर्छ नि 7,000 को, वेस्टेज जाने भयो नि त 10,000 त। यो 60,000 को लागि हुन्छ केटर हुन्छ नि, त्यो 10,000 रहन्छ नि अब त्यो उसमा, त्यसलाई चाहिँ त्यो कस्टहरूलाई चाहिँ कसरी 60 त अहिले मैले अजुम गरेर भनेको होइन, तर 60 फाइन गर्ने गाह्रो हुन्छ सुरुमा, अनि फेरि 10,000 अब नम्बर त त्यसकै रेन्जमा छ भने पायो भने नि, त्यो बाँकी रहेको त्यो एडिसनल कस्टलाई चाहिँ कसरी मेन्टेन गर्ने?
Okay, so Praveen, it's like this is one of the toughest thing which to find. That is something which company every day they like they have own department, okay, research and development department is छुट्याएर अनि उनीहरुको कामै त्यही हुन्छ के, try to finding that point कति सम्म सेल
हो नि सर यसमा चाहिँ, अनि त्यसैले अरु चाहिँ कसरी छुटाउँछ भन्ने खोजेको। अहिलेको वर्किङ इनमा वर्किङ उसमा चाहिँ कसरी छ डिपार्टमेन्टहरुमा चाहिँ कसरी छुटाउँछ यस्तो कुराहरु चाहिँ?
So for that you have to do research. There is no any option than doing research. Market अब जस्तै अब अघि मैले डेटा तपाईहरुलाई त्यो चाइनाको देखाए नि, चाइनिज गभर्नमेन्टले युआनलाई डिजिटलाइज गर्न खोज्दैछ है। त्यहाँबाट व्हाट वी क्यान अन्डरस्ट्यान्ड भन्दाखेरि चाइनिज गभर्नमेन्ट इज ट्राइङ टु फाइन्ड डेटा। व्हाई? त्यो डेटा भनेको रिसर्चको कस्ट घटाउनलाई। किन? तपाईको युआनमा सांघाईमा मान्छेले कति अमाउन्टको कपडा किन्छ, इन्फ्लेसन कति भयो हैन, एक्सपेन्डिचर ह्याबिट्स कस्तो छ, त्यो डेटाहरु आयो भने त उनीहरुले मान्छे पठाएर रिसर्च कस्टै गर्नु परेन हैन। सो त्यसले त ह्युज ब्रेक थ्रु हुन्छ। यस्तो कुराहरु फाइन्ड गर्ने भनेको अब कम्पनीहरुले अलग्गै दे हैव टु डु रिसर्च, अदरवाइज दे विल नट नो। फर एक्जाम्पल मैले हाम्रो फाइनान्स क्लासको अब 1 to 5 रेटिङमा अब तपाईहरुलाई कति चित्त बुझ्यो 1 to 5 हैन, चित्त बुझ्ने भन्दा नि चित्त त अब नबुझ्ला, कतिको बुझिरहनु भएको छ, कतिको अन्डरस्ट्यान्ड गरिरहनु भएको छ, यो मैले पढाएको चीज कतिको प्र्याक्टिकल लाइफमा युज हुन्छ जस्तो लाग्छ तपाईहरुलाई भनेर 1 to 5 स्केल गराएर सबैजना 25 जनालाई नसोधिकन आई विल नट फाइन्ड दैट 3 के, or आई विल नट फाइन्ड दैट 4 है। सो लाइकवाइज company when they start to sell in their business, they will never know what is the demand for the product exactly. That is one of the biggest struggle of companies. अब जस्तै फर एक्जाम्पल तपाई अब यहाँ ओम भेज मोमो फर एक्जाम्पल कहाँ छ तपाईको दिल्ली बजारमा, उहाँहरुलाई कति प्लेट मोमो बेच्दाखेरि ठ्याक्कै कति प्लेट मोमो चाहिँ दिनभरिमा जान्छ भने अनुसार उहाँहरूले आटा बुन्नुहुन्छ अनि मोमो बनाउनुहुन्छ सबै अब त्यो वाट गोज राउन्ड कम्स राउन्ड हुन्छ नि के गर्नुहुन्छ उहाँहरूले हिजो कति बिक्री भएको थियो अस्ति कति बिक्री भएको थियो अनि आज के बार हो शनि आज फ्राइडे फ्राइडे के हुन्छ बिदा हुन्छ लास्ट फ्राइडे कति बिक्री भएको थियो नट त्यो थर्सडे नट वेन्सडे तर लास्ट फ्राइडे बढी बिक्री भएको थियो किन धेरैजनाको बिदा थियो धेरैजना आउनुभयो मोमो खानलाई सो यु सुड अलवेज गो टु द पास्ट के यु सुड अलवेज गो टु द पास्ट अनि अब नयाँ बिजनेस छ डेटाहरू छैन भने नयाँ बिजनेसमा यु सुड अलवेज सी योर कम्पिटिटर्स त्यसरी थाहा हुन्छ त्यही भएर त हामीले रिटर्नहरू अनि यो डिमान्डहरू जहिले वी ट्राई टु फाइन्ड थ्रु पास्ट डेटा के फ्युचर प्रेडिक्सन त सब्जेक्टिभ प्रवीण माइट हेभ डिफ्रेन्ट future prediction. I might have different future prediction according to my own analysis. Prasamsa might have our own. Raman might have his own. है सबैजनाको अलग अलग हुन सक्छ कि सो द्याट इज द बिगेस्ट च्यालेन्ज प्रवीण त्यो थाहा पायो भने त बेस्ट भइहाल्यो नि ओके सो break even operating break even point you this break even point is very important indication त्यही भेज मोमोको उसमा गएर उहाँहरूलाई है और इभन और एलिस छ जुन एलिसहरूलाई दिनको कतिवटा कस्टमर आउँदा तपाईहरुलाई चाहिँ सेल्स हुन्छ भनेर तपाईहरुको चाहिँ ब्रेक इभन हुन्छ भन्यो भने त्यो अनुसारले मार्केटिङ स्ट्र्याटेजी बनाउन सक्छ उनीहरुले कति एग्रेसिभली लाग्ने मार्केटमा अझै एडभर्टाइजमेन्ट गर्ने कि नगर्ने भन्ने पोइन्टमा सो अपरेटिङ ब्रेक इभन इज भेरी इम्पोर्टेन्ट कन्सेप्ट it tries to find that point from where you will start to generate your profit. So let me quickly take you through break even भनेको fixed cost लाई cover गर्ने mechanism हो. This 25,000 त cover गर्नु पर्यो. If company wants to go in profit 25,000 fixed cost cover नगरी company will never go in profit in this case. So what happens 25,000 cover गर्नलाई हाम्रो मार्जिनले 1 so what is the margin 0.5 एक युनिट बेच्दा 0.5 आउँछ so 0.5 उठ्यो फेरि 0.5 अर्को उठ्यो फेरि 0.5 0.5 0.5 if you keep on adding 0.5 one point will come when you will cover this 25,000 and that point is called optimal point it is called equilibrium or it is called operating break even very important concept in finance in real life as well 20 यो भन्नको रिजन यो भनेको भने 25,000 फिक्स कस्ट भयो 2 भनेको सेलिङ प्राइस पर युनिट and 50,000 per unit 50,000 unit when you sell then your profit is zero you are not in loss you are not in profit but your profit is absolute zero it's neutral केही भएन बिजनेसमा जस्ट तटस्थ भयो है प्रॉफिट इज zero now if you sell in first case 50,001 unit this one unit will generate you profit 50,002 the second unit will generate profit uday anything above 50,000 will start to generate you profit so likewise in second case 70,000 is fixed cost and if you divide it by selling price and variable cost then you get your 70,000 unit second case ma ke bhayo bhandakeri 70,000 units sell गरेपछि मात्रै you will start to generate profit when will you start 70,000 one unit बेचेपछि मात्रै you can generate your profit है यसले के फाइन्ड गर्छ हाम्रो कस्टमर त आइराको छैन हामीले मार्केटिङ गर्नु पर्यो ब्रान्डिङ गर्नु पर्यो खर्च बढाउनु पर्यो त्यो एस्पेक्टमा so that we will sell more त्यसरी हामीले स्ट्र्याटेजी बनाउन सक्छौं ओके so operating break even is the output quantity at which EBIT is zero correct thus the plan A and plan B are like this right so break even is very important point we will further discuss about break even in next class यसरी हामीले एकदम chart wise हेर्छौं so that concept will cement in the next class right so we'll continue capital structure in the next class so with that thank you so much guys for your attention and see you tomorrow have a nice day bye bye
Thank you, sir. Have a nice day.
thank you bye bye